Gareth, we're looking at virtual meeting behavior again, and my mantra, as you know, is a virtual meeting is not a physical meeting done virtually. And we've also talked in the past about the absolutely critical importance of interaction. Talk to us about some of the skills and the tools that you can use to make sure that individuals, no matter how big the meeting is, are encouraged to participate.
Yeah, listen, I mean, before we talk about skills, I think there's also a principle just to be aware about, which is that as you've mentioned on many occasions, participation, engagement, critical. And of course, often and frequent is also critical. So first and foremost, we have something called the 4-minute rule. So it's a rule of thumb. So you want to be thinking about, engaging with the participants in any meeting, roughly every 4 minutes. It's not the law, but as a rule of thumb. And I think sometimes there's almost like an imagination void about how you can do that. And there are plenty of things you can do. There's lots of the technical stuff you can use, but it's just engaging people. The use of questions, the use of chat, probing deeper on that, using breakout rooms effectively, setting small tasks for people to then come back on. So it's that engagement element of it is super important so that you keep that engagement and keep that focus. So that 4-minute rule as a rule of thumb, roughly every 4 minutes, get people to do things.
And I think it's a fantastic tip, Gareth. And I know that oftentimes the time between interaction is much longer, and it gives people the chance to tune out. But that's one of the challenges with virtual is people tune out, especially if they haven't had to do anything or say anything for some time. So what kind of process can you use as a meeting runner, if I can use that phrase, that means that people aren't put on the spot, that they feel willing and motivated to respond?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think this is one of the areas where actually virtually has a real big win versus physical. So, one of the things you can use, of course, is the chat function, which is there in most software. So, getting people, to participate by inputting on chat. After posing them a question, getting their thoughts, and very quickly, as someone who's running the meeting or facilitating the session, whatever it might be, you're very quickly getting input from everyone in the meeting or most people in the meeting. And critically, of course, is you can see who's done that because you've got the names next to it. That gives you an opportunity, therefore, to pick out some of the real relevant points, talk it through as the chat as the input is coming through. And then, of course, to really get that engagement to another level, and also to find out what people, mean on a deeper level. That there's also engaging those on a one-to-one basis. However, there are some watch outs on that. What you don't want to be doing is effectively, pouncing on people. So, what do you think, Alex? And Alex is suddenly put on the spot. So, if you think about the use of chat, there is a couple of things that you can really do. One's called sequencing. So it could be, okay, so we're getting a really good point there from Alex. Gareth, you've got something in there, and Mary, you've also got a good point. So let's go in that order. Then there's a technique called nomination. So, put the name up front before you, engage the individual. That just gives them that little split second of time to just think about it and realize that they're going to be asked a question. So sequencing is almost like signaling that we're going to come, and the nomination piece does it as well. So very simply, it could be, right, Alex, we said we're going to go to you first. So Alex, what's your thought on whatever it might be? And again, you can just remind them to unmute, that type of thing, just to get those disciplines there as well. So I think there's the use of chat, get input, and then of course sequencing where we're going to go in terms of the participants, and then of course nomination, names first before the question. Just give people a little bit of comfort zone before they're engaged and not lacking that sort of being pounced on moment, as I mentioned.
Yeah, I love it, Gareth. And it's almost like you're creating a culture in that virtual room of participation. So by doing those things, I imagine the frequency and the ease of that participation will increase. And it will become a much more interactive meeting as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, one thing just to realize is while stuff is coming into chat, you can also just, okay, there's a really good input there from John, and Michael, you've got something in there. That's fantastic, really good. You can always build that as you're talking it through as well to get people to realize that their input's been recognized, it's been heard. You might not necessarily go to them afterwards, but there's something there about keeping people engaged. So how you go about using those tools is a super important thing, and it's relatively easy to do, but it does take some skill, does take some practice.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. Great tips.